You're listening to the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. This episode is titled 5 Things That Sabotage Your Dream Life. Ponder this. How would your life be different if you invited change? You invited things into your life that might be a bit of an obstacle, but if you overcame those obstacles, you would have a much better experience of life. How much better would your life be if you invited things that are your biggest obstacles into your life? And we're going to talk in this episode about why you're not inviting those things. But how much better would your life be? How much richer, how much more money, better health, better relationships would you have if you eliminated the sabotage that keeps you from having those things? Question for you. Why is it that if you're like most people, you resist opportunities to change even though it's handed to you on a silver platter? Do you view resistance as sabotage? If not, you may be surprised. Keep listening. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so creating the dream life and the things that get in the way of you doing that. And then I asked you in the introduction, and I said, if you're like most people, you resist things that are obstacles, but yet if you overcame those obstacles, you would create your dream life. So a question, have you noticed, and if you have, why is it, and I don't care where you are on the spectrum in life, this probably applies to most people. Why is it that you resist most opportunities to change you so that you can create what you want in life? Now, your first thought might be, Jim, I'm not resisting anything. I mean, I'm listening to your podcast. It's one of several that I listen to. I watch YouTube videos. I do this, I do that. And you may think that that's going to get you to where you want to be in life. But if you notice, you're still listening to me and everyone else because you haven't created what you want to create in life. And you haven't created what you want because you're actually putting up resistance to things that you want in life. And you're putting up resistance for, I'm going to say 5 different reasons. So there's several reasons, but let me cover these here, okay? So number 1, a reason, resistance, is the fear in you and that you're afraid to do what you need to do to create what you want. Another one is uncertainty. You're uncertain what's going to happen in your life if you do X, Y, Z to create more in your life. You know, I've offered many of you guys, all of you guys, the opportunity to be in coaching with me, and you haven't done it. Some people will actually, most people will never do it. And I'm just being candid, whether you like it or not. Most people will listen and they'll gather a lot of information, but they won't do anything differently. And the reason why was the second point that I mentioned, uncertainty. Oh my gosh, what happens if I do something different? That uncertainty, that's brain-based. We'll cover that in just a moment. The next one is, I've mentioned, not a lot in this episode, but I talk a lot about it in my transformational coaching program. We do a week on it, is a lack of responsibility. We're not being responsible for the life that we want to create. And 2 more. One might be skepticism, and that we're skeptical that people can do what they tell us they can do. we're skeptical of ourselves, and we don't call it skepticism, but we call it belief in ourselves. I don't believe I can do that. Do I believe other people can do it? Yes. But do I believe I can do it? No, I really don't believe that I can do it. That's skepticism. We're going to talk about that in this episode as well. And then finally, here's a big one. And I learned this from my brother-in-law, the shaman, Don Javier. Convenience. The reason we will not create the life of our dreams is because, plain and simple, it's not convenient for us. The definition of convenience, or inconvenience rather, is the loss of comfort. Now, ponder that, the loss of comfort. Now, think about putting yourself in the things I talked about. Think about putting yourself into fear. And generally, working with people like me, the fear is money. Secondly, next is look at the discomfort, loss of comfort that uncertainty causes you. Notice how much you don't do in life because you're uncertain of the outcome. And then that can tie into a lot of other different things, like I'm uncertain if I'm good enough. I'm uncertain if people are going to like me. I'm uncertain if people are going to accept me. The next one is a lack of responsibility, as I already mentioned, and that for many people, even though we think we are responsible people, we're not responsible enough to create the outcomes that we want in life. We're not responsible enough, let's say, for example, and I'm not advocating anything, and I'm not even talking about me, but we're not responsible enough to leverage debt, to use debt to grow our business or to invest in ourselves. Why? Because if I were responsible, then I would do it and I'd create the results, because the definition of result is actually creating an outcome. That's what it is. Simply being responsible for an outcome. But if I don't create it, then I'm being irresponsible, and that scares the hell out of a lot of people, meaning trying to do something and not creating it, and that's a loss of comfort. Another one is skepticism. And maybe that's not as much a loss of comfort as it is uncertainty. And then finally, the biggie, which I'm talking about in this episode, is if I do something that is not convenient for me, meaning it doesn't maintain the status quo, the homeostasis in my life, it doesn't keep everything so that I know exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. Holy mackerel, that is a loss of comfort. I don't want to put myself on a loss of comfort. Therefore, I'm going to metaphorically cross my arms, do nothing different, hope, wish, want, and pray that life's going to be different, and then be frustrated when life is not different. So the interesting paradox here is that you're listening to these episodes because you're not comfortable with where your life is. Ponder that. You're not comfortable with where your life is, meaning you're not comfortable with your relationships, your money, your health, wellness, whatever it might be. However, the paradox is that you're not uncomfortable to the point that you would do something new that is uncomfortable for you to get out of the discomfort by staying where you are. You know, about 25 years ago, I heard Les Brown, the motivational speaker, talking about, I'll make this parable very short, but this guy walked by a farmer's house, and every day he'd walk by, there'd be a big old dog on the porch and it'd be moaning and groaning. And the passerby one day said, well, how come, why is your dog always moaning when I walk by your house? And the old farmer said, well, he's on a nail. And the passerby said, well, why doesn't he get up off the nail? And the farmer said, don't hurt bad enough. Think about that. It doesn't hurt bad enough. So many of us, what we will not do, and I've been there before, we will not endure short-term discomfort and inconvenience for bigger long-term gain. And really, what we're creating is more pain long-term by not taking care of something short-term. The best example would be people that it's not convenient for them to save money for what many people call retirement, which I'll never do because I'll work till I leave the planet. But many people want to retire when they hit their, mid-60s, 70s, thereabout. And as I said, I'm not one of those people, but you see videos like this all over YouTube. People that are 65, 70 years old that say they've got like $12,000 saved. But see, they wouldn't do something prior 40, 50, 30 years ago to become uncomfortable enough to generate the revenue and the savings and the finances to be more comfortable in their older years. They didn't want to become a little bit uncomfortable to be more uncomfortable later. So earlier in life, they were very comfortable by staying in their zone, even though wherever they were, even though they didn't like it, because they were content. That's big. They were content. Okay. So if you're content and you don't have what you want in life, you don't have that dream life, and I don't mean the homes and the cars, but I mean the peace of mind, the quality, and the opportunity to have what you want maybe in the physical world. Maybe no mortgage, maybe a car when you want to buy one. Maybe you want to travel a little bit. Maybe you have a partner and you want to do things with your partner, but you can't because you don't have the money. If you settle for that, you are settling and you are content for having less than what you want to create in life. But then again, many times we won't go outside of our comfort zone because why? That's an inconvenience to us. Therefore, we're like the dog on the nail. We simply moan and we groan, but it doesn't hurt bad enough until we get a lot older and then we get that major whammy. A big one that I see that just baffles me. When I used to coach heavily in the multi-level marketing industry, I used to coach heavily at one of the top 10 companies in the industry. And their products were not the cheapest, but they weren't all that pricey. And they hired me to help their people get over objections for presenting the multi-level opportunity, but mainly the product. And I said, what's one of your biggest objections? And they said, the biggest objection is that people often complain that our product is not cheaper. They don't want to spend the money on their health and wellness. And my comment was back then, one way or another, you're going to spend the money on health and wellness. Metaphorically, you're going to spend $100 a month now for this product that will help keep you well, or you're going to spend $100,000 20 years from now in medical bills. Which one is easier, the $100 per month or the $100,000 or $200,000? And let me tell you, if you listen for any amount of time, you know I had some health ailments. Doctors still have no clue why. Well, they didn't want it to happen. But my combined medical bills for what happened to me in 2020, I'm perfectly healthy today, my combined medical bills, because I saw them all, even though my insurance company paid for them, my combined medical bills were $500,000. So I could have said, well, I don't want to pay for health insurance. I mean, it's like $1,200 a month. I don't want to pay that. So would I rather pay health premiums at $1,200 a month, even though it's not a matter of convenience for me. It's just, it is what it is. I mean, I can afford it. But if it were inconvenient to do, would I rather pay that health insurance at $1,200 a month or be saddled with $500,000 in debt and have creditors chasing me for the rest of my life? Now, that is a metaphor, but it demonstrates what I'm talking about. You've got to pay the prices now. But I want to take these apart very quickly. We won't spend too long on each one, but I want to take them apart. So, the 5 things that I talked about a little earlier, I want to look at these: the fear, the uncertainty, the lack of responsibility, the skepticism, and the concept of convenience. So, fear. The reason we get into fear about these things is because we fear change. It doesn't matter to what degree. The oldest part of the brain, called the reptilian part of the brain, it works from the premise that it's a survival mechanism. And it works from the premise that as long as I can predict what's going to happen, then I'm okay. But if I can't predict what's going to happen, then that's going to threaten my survival. And that comes from hundreds of thousands of years ago, even 10s and 20 and 30,000 years ago, when we had to hunt for food. We had to have a certain level of predictability of how safe it was going to be to leave the cave to go hunt for food. And if we couldn't predict how safe it was going to be, we wouldn't leave the cave until we felt that it was reasonably safe to leave the cave. So this is why many of us resist change, is the fear associated to the change, but the fear is driven by the lack of predictability of change. So for example, we could invest in the stock market and we could be doing very well. But then again, the stock market could not do well. So many people don't want to ride that wave of I could actually do really well or I could not do well. They don't like that unpredictability. So you have to manage that however you want in your own life. But I know I have found most times, not always, I've always come out better when I've stepped outside my comfort zone, done things that are unpredictable, invested, done things, gone places that are unpredictable and uncertain, but they've created bigger outcomes for me as opposed to staying in my comfort zone. So food for thought. The next one is uncertainty. I alluded to that a little bit. The reptilian part of the brain does not like uncertainty. It likes predictability. Now, back in the 70s, there was some research done with chimpanzees, but it was brain research. And actually, if I remember correctly, I think chimpanzees only have 1% of separation in their DNA from human beings. And what they did is they would actually hold up a banana and they would show the chimpanzee a banana. But before they would hold up the banana, they had the banana behind a little curtain, a little block where the chimpanzee couldn't see the banana. Then what happened is after they had shown the banana to the chimpanzee certain times, a certain amount of times, the chimpanzee learned to predict that every time that barrier was removed, there would be a banana there. Then what they did is they removed the banana and they replaced it with a head of lettuce. And the chimpanzees got all pissed off because they were predicting it was going to, well, I don't know if they got pissed off, but you know what I mean. But the chimpanzees, they learned to predict every time that little wall comes down, there's going to be a banana. And then when that predictability was interrupted and it was a head of lettuce, as I said, they got pissed off. They became agitated. So there was a lot more research done on this. And part of our brain, part of the oldest part of the brain, it's a survival mechanism. Okay, I want to segue from the episode for just one moment. It's back. What's back, you might be asking? Well, the classic Be Do Have series. If you're new here, the Be Do Have series is a 3-part live series where you get to interact with me, and I do 3 sessions of live trainings on the concepts of be, do, have. So you're going to get 3 live sessions of trainings with me, and you're going to get several days of free coaching and interaction with me and the group that you're in. The date is, and by the way, if I didn't say it, it is free. And many people have said that's been through it, that they would easily pay $1,000 for it. The first date of training is Thursday, June the 27th. When you get registered, all the details will come to you. And in this training, we focus on your human experience, not so much spiritual, though I bring the spiritual energy and we talk about it. But more than anything, we focus on the human you and helping you have a better life there. And the primary areas that we focus on in this training in the 3 days, number 1 is your human identity, who you became, who and how you are, and understanding more about your identity and how you show up in the world. We cover very, very extensively the concept of brain-based habits, how you are your habits and how your habits actually create your life for you, because you don't get what you want in life, you get your habits. We actually also cover subconscious programming, which relative to much of my work is actually connection with divine mind. And then we look at your ways of being, meaning how do you show up? You take who you are, look who you are from an identity level. How do you show up your ways of being? So we're going to deeply explore your human-based identity, your habits, your subconscious programming, and your ways of being. Again, we deep dive. Most people will say that no one is ever taking them as deep as I'm going to take you. Now, as you may or may not know, a lot of my work is spiritual, and we tend to think, oh, if I'm spiritual, I don't need that. Yes, you do, because you are dualistic. You are both physical and non-physical. And in this training, we work on the physical because you live in the physical world, have a physical experience, and you want to have a better physical experience while you are here. So even though a lot of my podcast episodes are esoteric and spiritual, I bring that energy and element into it, but yet we're looking at you from a brain-based, organic, neurological perspective to help you create a better experience of life. Over 250,000 people have been through this program over the last 6 years, and the reviews have been massive. That's why we are bringing it back. And as I said a bit ago, many people have said they would pay $1,000 to go through this training. So to register, go to jimfortin.com/be-do-have. jimfortin.com/be-do-have. So this is what you want to do. Number one, get registered. Number two, follow the prompts when you register. It will take you to the dashboard, and all the details you need will be on the dashboard. Show up and participate, because you're going to be working with me, yes, me, live for about a week with the training and everything else that we're doing. So it's an opportunity for you to interact beyond the podcast with me live. Now, a question for you, as if I'm coaching you. If you register and you don't show up and you don't participate, what does that say about your level of self-integrity, your level of commitment, your level of responsibility for changing your life? If you register and don't show up, what that really says is you're living in your old patterns, your old crap, and you're creating the same things over and over and over again in life. And if you're creating the same things because you won't change, guess what? You're going to get more of what you've been getting. So it's time to change. Again, it's free. Go to jimfortin.com/be-do-have, and I will see you on the Be-Do-Have live training. Okay, back to the episode. Like I talked about earlier, we want to know that things are going to be predictable, because when they're predictable, that gives us, even though it's a false sense to a large degree, it gives us a sense of security when we think we can't predict something. You know, as I've mentioned before, to show you how deceiving this can be, when we hop on an airplane, many times we think, you know what, it's predictable. I'm going to land at my destination safely. But as we know, it's not always safe. When we hop, generally it is though. It's the safest form of travel, as I understand. When we hop into a car, we literally are pretty certain we're going to get to point B, but you know what? We don't always get to point B. So it's just interesting the way life works like that. But the second reason that we're not creating the life that we want is that we cling too tightly to uncertainty. And the reality is, the truth is, there is no certainty in life for the most part. And any uncertainty you could give me, I can take apart for the most part. And that you could say, well, the certainty is that the sun's going to come up in the east. Are you sure? And that one day it's going to burn out. So therefore it's no longer certain. And we could go through a lot of different examples here, and I'm not talking about the sun burning out in our lifetime. It ain't going to happen for billions of years, as I understand. But the point is, we have to let go of that need for security. And you look at the great achievers, many of them, they would swing for the fences, and they weren't certain what was going to happen. I'm not telling you to swing for the fences, the baseball metaphor, meaning just hit and hit hard. Many of the great achievers would swing for the fences and put it all on the line. You know, I'm thinking of a conversation that just popped into my head. I had him on the podcast recently, and he's become a very good friend and a personal friend of mine, Gary Zukoff. And we were just laughing. He and I were having a conversation a couple of days ago, and we were talking about his friend, Brian Weiss, who wrote Many Lives, Many Masters back in, I think, 1996 or so. Brian is a licensed MD. He was, I believe, chief of psychiatry at Cedars-Sinai in Miami, I do believe. Could be incorrect, but I know it's something like that. And when he was working with a patient, they slipped into, when they were in hypnosis, they slipped into a past life, and they started bringing all this information to Brian. And Brian debated for a long time about whether or not he should write a book, and he should let people know that, because he thought he'd be laughed out of his profession. Well, that book today is still a bestseller 25 years later, longer than that, 30 years later. The book was that powerful, but he endured and went through the uncertainty of, What's going to happen if I do this? You know, it's interesting. I'll be having somebody on the podcast soon that's a very famous spiritualist, and he would have already been on the podcast if not for a car accident. I'm wondering, and he's mending right now and healing. I wonder if when he hopped in that car that day, how certain he was going to get to his destination. I have no clue, but that thought just popped in my mind. Number 3, responsibility. The definition of responsibility is making something happen. Now think about how much that can encompass. If you're responsible, 100% responsible for making something happen, whatever popped up in terms of uncertainty, you could deal with. Whatever popped up in terms of fear, you could deal with if you were responsible enough to deal with it. Because you can solve any problem, any situation, any predicament. You can create anything you want in life when you embrace the concept of responsibility, meaning causing something to happen. I might have said here on the podcast before, a former coach of mine used to say, a very banal statement. We've all heard it from mom when we were kids. If there's a will, there's a way. And that's a simple way to put responsibility. If there's a will, there's a way. When you're 100% responsible for creating something, you will make it happen. But the question is, relative to this episode, how inconvenient is it for you to be responsible, significantly responsible? Think about what the inconveniences are of you having to do things. Maybe just simple things like recycling. Maybe being responsible enough to go to the gym, but you say, no, it's raining today and it's cold. That's inconvenient. Therefore, I'm not going to go to the gym. But then out of the other side of your mouth, you say, I'm going to build a great body. Yes, I'm going to be responsible for it. But the caveat is, unless it's an inconvenience to me. So number 3 is responsibility. Number 4, I saw this social experiment on YouTube, I don't know, about 10 years ago. Now, for those of you watching video, I've got a 1 ounce bar of gold right here. This ounce of gold is what's gold today, $23.50 or something like that in the summer of 2024. Now, this 1 ounce of gold, I just had it in my desk drawer. It's probably been there for 5 years. I won't say too much about how I acquire gold or any of that, but I remember watching, meaning it's all legal, but you know, by the way, it's probably a pretty good investment to buy gold. I'm still shooting myself in the foot or slapping myself upside the head because one of my brother-in-laws was a hedge fund manager for Fidelity. He was a bigwig at Fidelity. He traded billions of dollars. And about 9 months ago, when gold was $1,800 an ounce, he's like, Jim, if you want to buy more gold, load up. And he goes, it's going to go. It's going to take off. And I'm kind of like, okay, I'll get to it later, blah, blah. Well, it's been hovering around 2,400. So I didn't listen. Anyway, but in this social experiment that I saw, this guy literally walked up to people on the street and offered, it's about 10 years ago, gold was about $1,000 an ounce. And he walked up to people and he offered them a gold coin, a 1 ounce gold coin. And that 1 ounce gold coin about 10 years ago, 14 years ago, was worth $1,000. And most people in the experiment, like 99.9%, turned him down. And you watched him do this on camera, and they were apprehensive, but they were skeptical. So think about this. What things in your life, what opportunities have come your way? What opportunities have at least shown up? What opportunities could you explore? But you're skeptical. I want to be honest here. There are a lot of people in the world who will take advantage of you. There are people in the world who will steal from you. The key is being mindful. And when I say mindful, I mean in terms of do your due diligence, explore, investigate. But when people offer me an opportunity, if somebody walked up to me and said, I want to give you a gold bar, I'd say, okay, sure, I'll take it. I remember that from about 30 years ago. I was at an event where Mark Victor Hansen was speaking. He's one of the creators of the book series Chicken Soup for the Soul. And I remember I was at an event. It was a small event, and actually I had a mutual friend who invited me, who's friends with Mark. She had known him for years prior. And in the audience, we were sitting in the front row, and Mark held up $100 bill, and he says, "Who wants this $100 bill?" And my thought was, well, I'll take it. But I never got up out of my chair. Not a single person in an audience of about 100 people, not a single person got up out of their chair and said, "I want that $100 bill." And Mark said, all you had to do is stand up, walk up here and take it out of my hand. But for some reason, you were skeptical that I was being serious about this. So explore your levels of skepticism. And in this world, it's healthy to be skeptical, but do not be cynical with your skepticism. Explore, investigate, do research. And then the last one, I learned this first as a spiritual concept from Don Javier. He said most of us, and this was all related to spiritual practice when he taught, he shared this with me. He didn't teach me anything, he shares. And he said many years ago, most of us won't do the work in life. Most of us won't do the spiritual work in life because it is not convenient for us to do it. It's not convenient for those of you that meditate. It's not convenient to meditate for 20 minutes a day. Why? I got more important things to do. Not convenient. So look at where convenience plays a role in your life. And I'm going to tell you flat out, the reason you've not created the life that you want is because it's not convenient for you. It's not convenient for you to transcend and leave your fear. It's not convenient for you to engage and manage uncertainty. It's not convenient for you to be 100% responsible. It's not convenient for you to explore the skepticism and see what's really there. And then finally, the fifth point was, the whole point is convenience. Convenience. And what's interesting is we live so much from convenience that we miss out on a lot of opportunity in life. People offer us opportunities to go, to travel, training programs, coaching programs, whatever it might be. And we often say, and I have in the past, I no longer do that, but I've said, I don't know, that's kind of pricey. And then what I would think, without even knowing I was thinking it, that's kind of pricey. But what was really going on in my mind was, it's inconvenient to have to change how I spend my money or how I make money or whatever it might be. And if it's inconvenient, I'm not going to do it. You can apply this to your working out. You can apply it to your relationships. You can apply it to your money. Please, please, please explore the concept of convenience and how much do you not do that would build a better life for you, and you don't do it because it's not convenient for you to do. And if something is not convenient, then what happens is it's not comfortable. And we often don't want to leave our comfort zones. Let me share something kind of interesting. Don Javier and I were just laughing about this, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And he said, you want to talk about leaving your comfort zone. You want to talk about the reality of really leaving your comfort zone. Well, let's talk about leaving the body, because you're leaving the illusionary comfort zone of the physical body. And then he said, let's flip that. And he said, you want to talk about an ultimate leaving of comfort zone? Talk about incarnating into your body, because you come from soulfulness, divine mind, from energy. Then you incarnate in the physical body. Then you're in this beautiful womb that's very cozy and very warm, and you get fed. You don't have to go mow lawns. You don't have to go work for a living, and mama carries you around. Then the ultimate leaving the comfort zone is being born, being popped out, all these bright lights, and a doctor spanks you on the ass. I mean, that is leaving your comfort zone. It's part of life. And if we don't follow that part of life, that's why you can take pretty much anyone you know in your life, including you. The reason you're not creating what you want is it's not convenient for you. You know about comfort zones. Many years ago, I realized myself after these learnings and this work of Don Javier, I said to myself, and this is only my words, I am not saying these are yours and I'm not calling you this, but I said to me, if I don't leave my comfort zone, damn, I'm a coward. Again, I'm not calling you a coward. I'm just what I was saying to me. I'm a coward. And I used that word because I knew it would motivate me because I strive to be courageous. So I said, if I don't leave my comfort zone, I'm a damn coward. And then I said, my soul is not a coward. My soul works from what I call, being a spiritual warrior. And if I'm afraid to leave the comfort zone, I'm not being a spiritual warrior. I'm being a coward. And then I said, I did not come to this planet to be a coward. I have the power of my soul behind me, and my soul is no coward, and I am going to live from that place. This is why I play full out. I swing for the fences. I calculate. I look metaphorically, if I'm swinging for the fences, I make sure that I've got some decent pitches, and I'm calculating, but I'll swing for the fences all day long as I, can calculate the probability that I'm going to strike a ball and knock a ball out of the park at some point. So, your transformational takeaway for this episode, we've looked at the things that keep you in your comfort zone. We've looked at fear. We've looked at uncertainty. We've looked at a lack of responsibility. We've looked at skepticism. And the big one, which drives a lot of these, is we look at convenience. Your transformational takeaway is this: what are you committed to? Let me ask you a question. Are you committed to self-sabotage? And you might think, well, hell no, Jim, I'm not committed to self-sabotage. Well, guess what? If you're getting into all the things that I just talked to you about, you are committed to self-sabotage. Why? Because you're sabotaging the life of your dreams. You're sabotaging a better life by staying in your comfort zone with all these things that I just talked about. What I also want to share, you're always committed to something in life. Somebody could say, you know what? This happens a lot in the transformational coaching program. We do a whole week on commitment, and people will often say, what I learned is that I'm not committed to anything. And I said, no, that's not true. You are committed. We're always committed to something. It's simply a matter of what we're committed to. Are we committed to building the body of our dreams? Are we committed to becoming wealthy financially? Are we committed to the most amazing relationships? Or are we committed to maybe lying on the couch? Are we committed to hanging on to our limitations relative to money? Are we committed to our old identity that keeps me broke? Are we committed to, the predictability? Are we committed to these things that keep us trapped? What you want to look at is you want to look at a few different things. Number one, I would suggest that you explore, you find people in your life, if you're committed to creating a better one, you find people that can help you actually create a better life. Another one, and this is a fear because people are committed to fear, is you take action, meaning just do something. Why? Because something leads to something. Next one is commit to doing the work. Commit to doing whatever it takes to create the outcomes that you want. Finally, ask yourself this: am I committed to convenience and sabotage, or am I committed to creating the life of my dreams? You cannot have both. So the question for you as we wrap up this episode, are you committed to convenience? And then, what does that convenience cost you now? And what is it going to cost you? And here's the big whammy. The convenience that you may be or probably are committed to now, what's it going to cost you to lose over the next 20 years where you could have this extraordinary life in 20 years, but you didn't create it 20 years earlier because you were committed to the convenience? Food for thought. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you over on another episode. Bye-bye. Okay, so that wraps up this episode. Remember, it's really important. Go to jimfortin.com/be-do-have. jimfortin.com/be-do-have and register for the up-and-coming Be-Do-Have series at the end of the month. Honestly, this is not a marketing ploy. We may or may not do it again. A lot of people have been asking for it. I know we're going to do it this time. We're going to do the full program, but as to whether or not we'll do it again, I do not know. So what I'm saying is if you don't register and you don't show up, you are going to be missing out big time. Don't take my word for it. Get registered, show up, and discover it for yourself.